What's going on, guys? Cassie from Jeep Gear and Gadgets. And Ben. I hope everyone is staying safe out there, maybe getting some extra Jeep projects done with any spare time you have, because that's what we're doing. Now, if you've been keeping up with any of the latest videos, you good?
Yeah, I think that's good.
If you've been keeping up with any of the latest videos, you'll know that we swapped out the front axle. Now we got the front end looking good. We got to start working on the rear end. Now this axle, we have a JK Rubicon 44 that we've been cleaning up, trying to get ready to swap it under the LJ. So Ben made it a little difficult and already had a truss on this axle, which meant we had to take a plasma cutter and cut off the truss, cut off all the old brackets, then get a grinder and grind everything down nice and smooth, get the axle bare so we can get ready to swap it under the LJ. Now Ben, oh, he has the old truss here.
Oh,
Look at this. Yeah.
Plasma cut, it made easy work of it.
It made it
awesome.
So much easier. It's much better than having to grind all of that off. I don't think I could have done it because that 7-inch grinder is really, really heavy. Now over here, we've got all of our goodies that we're gonna be putting in today. Can you grab the camera, please? Cameraman. So we have the 7-slot customs swap truss kit here. Now the great thing about this is that it's going to make the axle stronger and it lines everything up back to where the TJ mounts should be. So our springs, we have the track bar, all of our control arm mounts. It'll make it easier to throw this axle under the Jeep. Now we also had to get new control arms, so we went with the Clayton Offroad adjustable control arms. We went next with some new shocks because what's under there right now is still factory shocks. It is definitely time for an upgrade.
Those things are what, 120,000 miles on them? Yeah.
It's time for an upgrade, and the first step in getting the swap going is starting to put the truss on the axle and get it welded on. Now we got the truss mocked up on here, but before we can weld it on, we need to paint the underside, which we almost forgot to do because once we weld it on, we can't get under here and paint it to prevent any rust in the future. So let's just get it off and go paint it real quick. We went with a swap truss kit, but you could also DIY it and make your own brackets. But for time's sake for us, and it just makes it a little easier, the swap truss kit was the way to go. Now there's tons of different brands out there on the market, but 7-slot customs or Barnes, they have the best price point. They're very well made, and the code JK Gear gets you another 10% off on top of that. Now, while all of this paint is drying, we need to check out the pinion angle that's on the current setup, kind of mock it up on this axle so we can actually start welding and get this going. 9.6, we're gonna go with 9.6. Now that I have the pinion angle set, I can go grab the truss. I think it's almost done drying, place it on here, make sure it's nice and level so that the springs are straight, and actually start welding this thing on, finally. The first step was to center the truss on the axle and set it level. Then tack weld the truss pieces together with a few tacks on the axle. Next up was welding the spring retainers and the coil buckets. They pop right into the truss and get welded in. The upper control arm brackets tab right into the truss and then get tacked into place. The kit comes with sway bar brackets. Weld the nuts on the backside and then tack the brackets on. Even though I don't run a rear sway bar, it's nice to have the bracket in place. The kit comes with a raised track bar bracket, which is great. Once again, it tabs right into the truss to locate it perfectly. The lower control arm mounts are next. Tab them into the truss and tack weld them up. Last but not least are the shock brackets. After all the brackets are installed, it's time to finish up and weld everything together. When welding the truss to the axle, make sure you take your time. Let it cool and bounce around from opposite ends of the axle so you don't create too much heat in one spot. You don't have to weld every single spot, but just enough to make this a really strong setup. So we're finally done welding the axle. It took us like, what, 2-3 hours, right? Like, it took us a while. We're gonna let it cool off a little bit so we can spray paint it with some Steel-It. So after that, I think we might start tearing the old axle out tonight, maybe tomorrow morning. We'll have to see. I threw 2 coats of Steelite on the axle, and I'm gonna give it a few hours to let it dry so that the finish turns out nice. However, there are 2 things we can do in the meantime, and I forgot to mention them in the beginning of this video. And we are going to be changing the brakes just like we did in the front, going with the Power Stop brake kit, and we're also having to change the pinion yoke just like we did in the front. Yeah. All right, so I have it laid out on the table over here. We've got this drilled and slotted rotors from Power Stop, and we also have the Z36 special formula brake pads, and here is our 1310 pinion yoke. Also, this time we remembered to look at the brake calipers before installing the brakes.
Look at them.
Look at there. We forgot to do that last time and had to go to Advance, and get a new brake caliper.
And pinion yoke.
And pinion yoke.
No, wait, oh. Sorry, you're good.
We're good to go this time on brakes.
I'm really good to go. I'm not used to watching, like, normally I'm the one doing the welding. Cassie was welding this axle up for about 2 hours, so I went through my quarantine beer.
He can't even talk. Look, he went through all his beer.
I went through all my beer, and now we're drinking whiskey, so I think Cassie's gonna have to finish the rest up tonight.
So I'm gonna go hang out for the kids for a little bit, get them down to bed, and then come out, do the brakes, do the pinion yoke, and start ripping out the new axle, the old axle. Yes.
The new axle. Rip it out. It's looking good though.
It is.
Look, check it out.
Would you just look at it? So
really nice.
pretty, right?
Cassie's welds turn out awesome.
Okay, so the welds on this swap truss kit, there's a lot of welding, not just the truss kit to the axle, but also the brackets and everything. There's a lot of weird angles, and not all of them look 100% perfect, but I think I did okay for all the weird angles and stuff that you have to do.
Cassie is way too hard on herself. Like, look at that. Just look at that weld. Like, look at that. Those are good. Those are beautiful.
I think, it turned out all right. Okay, I'm gonna go hang out with the kids. I'll be back tonight. Last night we finished up all the small projects on the axle, and it looks so sick. We got the new Power Stop rotors and pads on, reused the old JK calipers. Those are good to go. We went ahead and changed out the yoke as well, and we painted the diff cover and replaced the diff fluid. So this axle is literally ready, good to go to slide under the Jeep. Now yesterday I didn't really give you a good look at the truss from 7-Slot Customs, and look how beautiful it is. Painted, welded on. The axle looks strong, it looks good, it looks beefy, it looks brand new. Which leads us into the best part of the whole video, changing it out. We are ready to start taking apart the rear end and throwing this axle under it and getting it put back together. Just pulled the old shocks off, and these things are shot. Look. I mean, look at this. Yeah, time for new shocks. We finally got the old axle off from under the LJ, and now we can look at both 44s side by side. So the JK44, it's a newer generation compared to the LJ44. It has bigger axle tubes, it has a bigger housing, and the brakes are larger. And it's just a better and stronger axle compared to the LJ44. Now, you could beef this axle up, put a truss on it, new axle shafts, re-gear it, but since we already had the JK Rubicon 44, we're gonna use it and throw it under the Jeep. Now we did have to figure out the brakes. So on the TJs, as most of you probably know, it has one brake line that comes down and then splits to each caliper. On the JKs, they're a little different, and they have their own brake lines that go to each caliper. So we had to reuse the old line that came off the TJ. Well, not this brake line. This is the extended brake line from Clayton Offroad. We just put that in. The hard line is the one we had to reuse. So we mounted the brake line to the axle, kind of bent the hard line just a little bit for it to go around the truss and zip tied it here at the end. Now, what we had kind of an issue with, or not an issue, but we had to fix, is the brake line banjo bolts are larger on the JK compared to the TJ. So we had to drill out the brake line to make it a little larger, and that solved that. So the banjo bolts on the JK will work with this brake line. Speaking of drilling, wait, hold on. Speaking of drilling things out,
That's what she said.
Stop that. See, we have a bolt right here and a bolt right here. Which one would you go with? 10 millimeter or the 1/2 inch?
This is like Blue's Clues.
The
That
1/2
one.
inch, yes, absolutely. So the cool thing about the Clayton Offroad upper control arms is that they come with a big bolt upgrade. So we have some adjustable control arms again for the TJ. You can adjust them on both sides, and it also comes with a bigger bolt, which means we're gonna have to drill out our upper control arm mount on the axle side for the bigger bolt and on the frame side. Another really neat thing, what was I gonna say?
Another neat thing.
It's all neat, they're so cool.
Are the lights.
The lights, our garage lights, I love those things. The Clayton Offroad control arms also, they're square tubing, not circular tubing, so they're stronger. And then on the lower control arms, I feel like I'm not even talking to the camera at this point. And then the lower control arms comes with the gyro joint and the Johnny joint. So it's gonna absorb a lot of those vibrations, be a nice ride on the road, but also perform great off-road.
We need to make an interactive video. I spy something red. It's not for you, it's for the viewers.
All right, if you get it right, what are you gonna give them, Ben?
Huh? This is my video.
Okay.
I'm out. I'm
All
out.
right, I think,
Ben's out.
I think that is it. I think now we're ready to actually move this one out of the way and get the new axle in.
What are we doing now?
Let's get started.
Here you go, you take the camera.
All right, time to get the new axle under the Jeep.
I'm out.
Finally.
Cassie's doing it. I'm out.
Actually, we're for real this time. Y'all, the axle is under the Jeep. We've been working for about, what, 2 hours now? It's a long time past view 30 for this guy. But we have a decent amount of stuff under and hooked up. We got the lower and upper control arms, the drive shaft, the track bar over here.
That big
Here,
spring right in front of
the big spring right here, and we've got it all mocked up. We still have to do the shocks. We still have to set the pinion angle, torque everything down, figure out all that fun stuff, and we have to figure out what to do about the e-brake.
I got
Right.
it. I got it.
You got an idea for that? But it is getting late. We've been out here in the dark. It's been a couple hours right about now, so I think we're gonna call it a night, go to bed, and pick up in the morning, and everything should be done. So, see y'all in the morning. Good morning, everyone. We are on day 4, in all seriousness, of this axle swap.
And it's not really morning.
And it's really the evening. It is time to finish this thing up and get it out on the road for a test drive. So last night when the cameras were off, we torqued everything down except for the shock over here. And we still have to bleed the brakes, which is my least favorite job. If anyone wanted to know, I hate bleeding brakes. I don't like being the pumper of the brake pedal. I don't like I don't like bleeding the brake lines. Like, I don't like either job, but we have to do it to get out on the road. So,
Just for the record, I don't necessarily enjoy it either.
But is it your least favorite job? Like, is that your least favorite mechanic job?
I don't have a least
Or
favorite.
like work, like, yeah, it's my least favorite. There are 3 things that I do want to point out now that I have the axle under the Jeep, things we're gonna have to probably change in the future. And I'm gonna start with the diff cover. We're gonna have to go with a low profile or thinner diff cover because it's gonna hit the gas tank during up travel. So we're probably gonna change that out in the future. Jackal boy, I need your help with the shocks.
Yep.
So the shocks on the TJ and LJ, terrible mounting places. There's not much room to get a long shock in there. So basically, Ben's gonna lower it so you can see the down travel.
Severely limited.
It's severely limited. I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, that's all the down travel that we have. So in the future, we're probably going to go with coilovers or do a shock
Outboard the
tower.
shocks,
Yeah, outboard the shock. So
We just don't have time.
don't have the time to do it now, but we do plan on doing it in the future. And the last thing is the drive shaft. Now, we changed out the yoke, so we're able to reuse this drive shaft. The length is fine, but we are going to go with something stronger in the future. All right, so now we're going to get this last shock in, bleed the brakes, take it for a test drive. Go.
All right.
go, go, go. Ready? Ready?
Yep.
All right, you're good.
Alright.
Okay. And just like that, this axle swap is done. Finally, the front's in, the rear is in. That's it, we're done. Now there are things, of course, that we'll probably have to change. There are things I still want to talk about that I haven't really covered in depth just because we've been wanting to get these axles under the Jeep, but that will be coming. But first we need to take it for a test drive, test it out on the road. We need to test it out off the road and figure out what we know we want to change. Well, I guess there's one thing left to do, and it's put the wheels and tires back on. Heck yeah! And just like that, this axle swap is done. How does it look wide?
It's wide.
Look how good the rear end looks. Like,
I think we need some rear fenders.
it looks sweet. Now it is literally, the axle swap is done. Now there are things we want to change in the future, but we really won't know until we go out and test it out on the road, off the road. I don't know, I'm just really excited right now because this took a long time to do, or to prep for, and then actually do. And just to see the Jeep on all fours right now is really, really exciting. So, time for a test drive? Time for a test drive. That's it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I know the past few videos have been very heavily focused on getting this axle swap done, but I'm so excited to finally be done with this project for the most part. There's still things we need to do. I'm curious though, what do you guys want to see next on this build? Get onto the comments below. Let me know what you want to see next because there are plenty of videos coming. This is just the beginning. As always, give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and my name's Cassie and keep Jeep and classy.